reproductive rights are under assault in the United States. And what's worse, the rationale put forth by the Supreme Court to justify rolling back nearly 50 years of precedent that there's no implicit right to privacy in the Constitution lays the groundwork for a full court press on a host of other settled cases. Deep Listens is taking action, and we need your help. Of course, we want you to learn about the elected officials in your area and vote in every single election, but we'd like you to consider contributing to the national network of abortion funds as well. The NNAB is a clearinghouse of regional abortion and reproductive health organizations across the United States. Their goal is to remove financial and logistical barriers to abortion access, centering on those looking for assistance and organizing at the intersection of racial, economic, and reproductive justice. You can contribute to the NNAB directly at abortionfunds.org/donate. You can also use their site to locate an abortion fund in your area so you can keep your money local and aid your neighbors. Thank you, and now back to your regularly scheduled podcast. Welcome to Off the Deep End, a Deep Listens podcast where we plumb the depths of role-playing video games. In depth. I left that in there just for repeated emphasis, because I think that's funny. My name is Jeff Rude, the host and St. Joseph's Basilica of this operation. Joining me, as always, we have the Strathcona Science Provincial Park of the show. It's Braden, Arbitrary Water Redacted. Hello, Braden.
Hello, Jeffrey.
Also joining us, as always, it's the Galaxyland powered by Hasbro of the show. It's Chris Zombie Pie Redacted.
Hello, Jeff. As someone who has issues with their eyes, I forget if you were a glasses person all the way or a contact lens person.
I wear glasses because I'm horrified of things touching my eyes.
I am a contact lens person, but I can tell you, every single person, all of us in the contact lens arena, you will eventually lose a contact lens into the back of your eyeball, and it will pop out during inconvenient times. And that happened 2 days ago. I got a contact lens that had been there for about a week.
I'd rather die.
And then I got LASIK.
Also joining us on this very special episode of Off the Deep End, it's the Royal Alberta Museum itself. May I present the Mistress of Games, Game Maker M Palladino. Hello, M.
You can't make me do it. You can't make me do this.
We have dragged you, like so many speakers of Parliament, we have dragged you in front of this assembly to help us out. And in case you're wondering why I listed off various Edmonton landmarks,
I was wondering about that.
That is because we're going to be talking about Edmonton's finest digital produce. That's right. We'll be discussing Dragon Age 2, specifically in the context of the Summer Kusolstice episode. We're going to get into why maybe we all regret that designation, and by we, I mean me. Dragon Age 2, as you know, this is a title that was developed by BioWare, the MDK2 people. Maybe you've heard of them. The Sonic, the Dark Brotherhood people for the Nintendo DS. Maybe you've heard of that. Weird amount of...
Oh, the Anthem people.
Yeah, strange amount of games that have been covered by Deep Listens, I guess, already... I guess not that strange. It's BioWare. They're huge. This was published by Electronic Arts. There's a story there. It was released on March 8th, 2011 in North America for that PlayStation 3, also that 360, also that Microsoft Windows platform, and also Mac OS X, everyone's favorite iteration of Mac OS. I presumably that was Snow Leopard at that point. So, hello, good people. 6.8, the first wave of Intel Macs, subsequently released in Australia and Europe and Japan in that order. I cannot emphasize this enough. That was the order on physical and digital storefronts. We're going to talk a lot about the origins of this game, and probably the first chunk of this, I think we've kind of preemptively agreed that there's a lot to chew on here. So I'm just going to tell you right now up front, get ready for 2 episodes of this one, folks. We've chosen Dragon Age 2 to be a thing we're going to do 2 episodes about. It joins a list that includes, like, Grandia 2 and Xenosaga and Arcanum. So we've lost our minds. If you'd like to be a part of ongoing discussions about Dragon Age 2, there's a place you can do that. It's called the Discord that we operate. It's the Deep Listens Discord. And if you're wondering, how do you get into that cool club of cool people? Well, it's very easy. Go to patreon.com/deeplistens. That's patreon.com/deeplistens. You know how to spell that, because it's mentioned on every one of the podcasts you listen to. Kicking in any dollar amount to that Patreon will get you access to that Discord. It will allow you to potentially be in a position to kick up a donation or contribution, that is, to $3, which will let you put an RPG on the slush pile that we pull from. That's right, there's a $3 bid. So pony up them $3 and we will consider an RPG from you. And if you'd like to just yell at us about this terrible policy or really anything else, in addition to the Discord, you can also send email to inquiries@deep.lol. That is inquiries@deep.lol. And finally, most importantly, there's a list. You can go to bit.ly/OTDErank and see exactly what we think of every video game that has ever been made, bar the ones we haven't touched yet.
There's one more thing.
Oh?
We're very close to reaching our 30 patron goal.
The 30 patron goal? What's the 30
That's
patron
right.
goal?
What does that mean?
Jeff, what if I told you that if the Deep Listens Patreon reaches 30 patrons, us 3 and any potential bystanders will have to experience Ultima 9, Richard Garriott's finest hour.
The ultimate Ultima.
You at home could contribute to this and give us a real Kusolstice instead of this game, which is mostly fine, I guess.
Mostly.
Braden, but what if we played 7? What if we
you
played
mean
Ultima
7, the Blackgate and Serpent Isle, 2 of the most beloved RPGs of the early 90s?
But only on the Super Nintendo.
Oh, I'm amazed you didn't say like some sort of bullshit Sega Master System port.
No.
No, the Super Nintendo version where they got rid of all the Jesus.
Yeah. And most of the good... Man, that is a rough way to play that game.
But anyways, gentlemen, don't forget that we have other donation extension goals beyond that. But again, we're doing a bit of a modified thing. If you've already had your game picked from the slush pile, if you double your current donation amount, we'll allow you to suggest a new game. So anyone who's at the $2 to $3 range, come on, bump that up to $5. And if you do that, and you would like to invite a friend that would you think be a wonderful addition to the Deep Listens Discords, contact Gino upon doubling your current donation amount, and we'll give them an invite. Also, we've got some other bad games after, this one. It gets darker.
I think we might have threatened a different BioWare game.
One that I am still amazed they haven't announced an official cutoff date, and the day they do will be the day we
I've
probably
apparently
install.
been informed that Anthem these days is doing financially okay.
What
does that mean?
Why?
I have no words.
That could mean
What does that
anything.
mean? That game, they literally canceled that game
Yeah.
after making it.
That's how
They
most games
said,
get
what if we
canceled.
fixed the game and made it more like Destiny? And then they said, nah, actually, no.
What if we just didn't make it?
What if we made a Dragon Age game that is just a Dark Souls? Speaking of Dragon Age, Jeff.
So I'd like to start with a quote.
Please.
So this is from senior producer at BioWare, whose name was Fernando Mello. He said this in an interview on February 8th, 2011, about the game. This is a full quote here. So, we have data, Fernando says, that shows there are a lot of people that enjoy playing RPGs, although they won't necessarily call them RPGs. They'll play Fallout, Assassin's Creed, and even Call of Duty, which have these progression elements. You're putting points into things, but they don't necessarily associate that as an RPG. So we think that if we expand that out, we'll attract a much bigger audience.
So this was before Dragon Age?
So this is a quote that came out about a month before this game released, and around the time I think the first demo for this game came out.
So were they planning on doing the thing that they said they were going to do in the quote?
I mean, I think it kind of gets to some of what this game is and what it is doing. Very, very top-down level. I guess, we should continue to try to be good about explaining what these games are. Dragon Age 2 is a sequel to a pre-existing Dragon Age game called Dragon Age Origins, which came out in 2009. That's kind of important for the production history of this game.
On the main pod.
Yeah.
It was my first appearance.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
I think that game
doesn't hold up.
I have related my experience of replaying Dragon Age Origins as akin to losing my faith in organized religion. So let that sit.
Finding out Santa Claus not only isn't real, but he was never real.
Finding out that Santa Claus is a lot slower and uglier and more bloated than you remember him being. So
it's worth noting, I would say, having experienced it around the time you guys released that episode, because it was a thing that my Miss Columbo here was interested in looking at, I was not impressed at all. And I think part of that is just I think the console port is pretty poor, like as it goes, but wound up just kind of hating most of the characters and kind of loathing the plot.
You don't like Alistair?
Yeah, like just not a lot for me to sink my teeth into. But at the time, when that game came out, its reception was verging on rapturous in certain corners. And I think that had... there's a certain amount of, I think, willful ignorance on the part of people who were having that rapturous sort of feeling. That was basically just like, yeah, PC RPGs are back, baby. And it's like, it's a nonsense position, right? Like, they kind of never went away. They just became smaller and started coming out of Bulgaria.
I want to completely be the opposite of everything else that's been shared here. I think that Dragon Age Origins was an incredibly important game, if not kind of a watershed moment. It and Skyrim played a huge role in moving the Western RPG out of the CRPG arena. And while I think that KOTOR and earlier works by BioWare and Bethesda certainly did that, it was Dragon Age Origin and Skyrim in terms of properly moving the Western RPG into the spotlight, to the point that the genre became a mainstream accepted thing. Like, people are excited about the next Elder Scrolls game and the works of Bethesda, BioWare, and even what we used to call B-tier studios like Larian, because this genre just is no longer about a hardcore old-fashioned fan base that is belligerent about it following D&D mechanics. So Dragon Age Origins,
worse for it.
Dragon Age Origins to me was the first and still is an important game in terms of showing that you could be Western RPG, CRPG, even though I don't fully like that term, without having that weird engine that even those early BioWare games had that were basically just souped up D&D 3.5e. So I'm going to completely disagree with everyone else here in this podcast. Origins is a completely massively important game. Like, you do not get, maybe you get Larian making Divinity 2, but you don't get Larian getting a blank check to make Baldur's Gate 3, because this genre would not have been as far into the mainstream zeitgeist at all.
I will say, maybe at the time in 2009, not even 20 something, very important game. When is the last time you've played Dragon Age Origins?
I played it along with the podcast.
Oh, okay.
The other thing is that Dragon Age Origins still sells well. Like, alone, Dragon Age Origins within the first year of its release sold 1 million DLC packs. So that's crazy. For better or worse, other works of EA and, again, Oblivion helped to legitimize DLC within consumers, for better or worse.
And all of that DLC for that game is trash.
Some of them are okay.
Oh, you mean the real expansion? Yes.
For Origins?
Awakening is very good.
Yeah, Awakening is a traditional ass old school expansion.
Yes.
It's not Leliana's Song or Golems of Angmarack, where it's just like, you want a 2-hour dungeon crawl?
Gotcha.
As we've discussed, the BioWare expansions are ranging in quality.
The ones that are good are really, really good.
And the ones that are bad are so bad.
So, yes, and we will probably consider the DLCs for this game in the second episode, because there's a lot to chew on here. The thing I will say about Dragon Age Origins is, like, in addition to, hey, maybe I'm not the hugest fan, I can't deny that it's at least, like, a fairly expansive experience, right?
Yeah,
like there's a lot to chew on.
Yes.
There's a lot of places to go. There's a lot of people to see. There's a lot of different interactions that you can have. It feels like even if it's not like a end-to-end navigable like 3D space world, like there is sort of an abstraction layer with a map that you're moving, for lack of a better word, like a little board game piece around to go to like discrete zones. It feels cohesive enough. They pull it off. Okay, again, talking about my experiences with the console version. That's the mode, right? I think that's like people enjoy this. I think when you say, hey, there's going to be another Dragon Age, the table has been set for a certain kind of experience. Some things happen between the release of Dragon Age Origins, the release of Dragon Age Oregon, which is a great game. I love it. The strip club's incredible. And Dragon Age 2 that are worth talking about. The first one of those would be the release of Mass Effect 2, probably, which I think gave this studio probably a lot of like critical runway and expectations that may have wound up being way, way too high in retrospect. I think Mass Effect 2 is the game that paved the way for that brief period where EA just rebranded half their studios as BioWare. Like,
yep. Remember when they were supposed to make a CNC game?
Yeah.
The CNC game by BioWare Victory, which was the team led by John Van Caneghem, who was the lead on Might and Magic 6. The early 2010s were a time for BioWare.
Nestled into that comment is the EA-ification of BioWare. So Mass Effect 1 comes out. They're a discrete operation doing... They sign partnership deals, they sign contracts, but... And, like Mass Effect was originally a 360 exclusive title. Not owned by Microsoft, but there was some manner of partnership there, is what I recall there being. Those also came out on PC. Mass Effect 2 released in a post-EA merger, purchase, acquisition world, but clearly began production prior to that. Dragon Age 2 functionally is the first, like, cradle-to-release EA product that BioWare made. And it's worth noting the date on this, too. As you know, Dragon Age Origins, a game that released in 2009, in November of 2009, this game released about 16 months after that. That is not very long at all. That is, in fact, pants on head, insane little time to make something even half as expansive as Dragon Age Origins. And as a result, this is why I go back to this, like, we're trying to, let's see, what's this quote? Expand that being, like, the softening of RPG mechanics, basically, making this a more Call of Duty-esque experience. I don't know if they Call of Duty'd this game, but what they did is they made about as condensed an RPG as I think you could make, and made it about as expansive as you could in such a small canvas. And the main cut that was made is, instead of making this on like a region, this is basically the story of a city. A character study where the character is a town. It's not a town, it's like a city. The city of Kirkwall, and the role of you, the player character, in that town. As a reduction of scale from Dragon Age Origins to what is done in this game, I can see a certain number of people being very mad about that on the internet in a very shitty way. I think that, rolled up with a couple other chud criticisms of this that we'll get to much, much later, add up to why I think this game has such a dubious reputation post facto. Totally undeserved. This is not Kusoge. I'm going to say it right now. We've mislabeled this. I've mislabeled this. This is not a bad game. It just has problems. Big, very clear problems.
This as the person who is the Dragon Age origin apologist, I guess, of the four of us,
I
felt
like this game.
I felt the same disappointment I felt when I first played Dragon Age 2.
Yeah?
Yes,
Really?
I absolutely. I feel like these scale, like that's the thing. If you're going to have all of the weird technical rough edges, if you're going to have the negative art direction, art style of Dragon Age Origin, you really should go big. You really should just have pie in the sky aspirations of having these big epic storytelling, and then reducing it to that one singular city, Kirkwall, to me still is a bit of a disappointment in terms of scale and scope.
That's interesting, because when I first played this game, I went into it knowing nothing about Origins, because I thought it was like a side thing compared to like the main story. So I did the deep listens thing where I start on the second one, back in probably 10 years ago at least.
Yeah, this was a 2011 joint.
Yep. And I usually, when I have like those big sweeping stories, it's like not on the ground enough for me. Like, even with Origins, it was kind of like you start in your like origin story, as the name implies, and then once you get into like the deeper like main story quests, it gets a little bit more like large scope, and I was really about that.
It becomes more BioWare.
Exactly. Yeah. And then having this game be my introduction to the series, I was like, oh, this is like about this one city and how it's going to change over 3 acts. And there was something like very novel about it, compared to other games that were in that genre, which I think is like kind of the influence from Mass Effect, but also Mass Effect was doing its, big sweeping thing. I don't know if Skyrim was out yet, but Elder Scrolls was also a big factor in this, where it's like
Skyrim came out about 8 months after this. I think it was like October or November.
Yeah, so they were sort of contemporary, but wasn't influencing it. So I don't know. It felt like reading a like adventure novel or something, kind of Game of Thronesy, but not like too much.
I do want to say, as now I feel like a lot of information has come out in terms of why the game is focused on one city transforming over 3x. I understand why they did it. I think it's completely unenviable, as Jeff will probably get into more details about, having to make a game like this and follow up a game as big and widened scope as Dragon Age Origins in about 13 months. Like, yeah, this is probably the best they could have done. But I still do feel that disappointment that, I mean, I feel the same way that I feel about like Final Fantasy X-2. X-2 is probably a good game. There are people who still tell me that X-2 is probably a good game, but it's tonally, mechanically, and structurally so different of this thing that I already like. Like, of course I feel disappointment because it's not the same. And that's something that I think we've all experienced, whether it's warranted or not, at least once in our life with a follow-up to a game that you really liked.
I remember liking this game at release and being an apologist. And now it's fun.
It's got a special place in my heart, and it can never be taken away from there. But will I keep playing it?
Yeah.
Probably not.
The small scale of this game is its greatest asset and its greatest weakness. How about that for a thesis, huh?
I do like that.
Agreed.
Yeah. It makes it kind of a unique product and a unique entry in the series, but then again, it seems it's weird to take like a mile high view. So the only one of these games I've finished to date, laying it out here, is Inquisition. I was playing with my partner, and that game is fairly different from Dragon Age 2. That game is
My
also
next question was going to be if we were going to even take that one into account.
not really for the purposes of this, but the thing
wants to donate $3.
Yeah, well,
I'll play 20 hours of Dragon Age Inquisition again and go, God, this game is so bloated.
There's so much of this.
But like that's a pretty different game from this, right? Like
yes.
It's again, I keep going back to that pull quote basically, but sort of like action gamey sort of mouthfeel, taking sort of base action RPG mechanics and really spreading them about as thin as you legally can to the point of being like almost a homeopathic RPG sometimes, and then just turning it into an 80-hour thing in a giant. Again, they're kind of zones, but the zones are all enormous, and there's like 6 or 7 of them that you're running around. It's just a sprawling fucking mess, and definitely got to a point where it's just like I'm not even quite sure why I intended to go to this zone at a certain point, because there's so much extra shit that I've encountered walking around. Like, definitely feels more like a post-Skyrim take on a Dragon Age thing. This game feels so much more focused than that.
David Gator, who was the lead on this game.
We're going to talk about him a lot.
He was the lead on. He worked at BioWare all the way back from Baldur's Gate 2, I think, and he is kind of the guy for the Dragon Age series, and ever since he left BioWare after his version of Dragon Age 4 was canceled because they put that entire team to help put out the fire that was Anthem. He's been pretty frank about his the difficulties developing these games, and he's had a lot to say about the time spent making this one.
Are we talking about the lyrium problem? Or are we not even there
we're
yet?
talking about that man's entire Twitter account for the last 3 or 4 years.
That was very recent. That was like 3 days ago he posted that, which is very timely.
He's making that musical RPG now.
What?
So
it's Stray Gods, the role-playing musical. Okay.
So, yeah, I just played that.
You might be into it.
What if I told you that there are ways for you to be a empowered lesbian that dates plus-size women?
Hell yeah. Sounds great. I'm in.
What if
can I give it?
Also, mechanically, it is like Disco Elysium, meaning there is no combat. It is all BioWare.
Real combat is music.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And do you like Laura Bailey? Because she's your primary character and she sings a lot.
Laura Bailey, Ashley Johnson, a whole bunch of other...
Troy Baker.
Baker.
I'm going to be very honest. I did not have the best time with that game just because I feel like musicals are not my thing. You should definitely consider, just because you got one more day to do this, check out the Steam Next Fest demo.
Interesting. I will download
My only problem with that the demo that they've given is that it is stitched together vignettes that give you the idea of the game's tone. I just feel like that they're a little too disconnected at times.
Interesting.
Dragon Age 2. So
Dragon Age 2.
Dragon Age 2. So this is in reference, you guys are talking about David Gator put out a tweet where he explains something called the lyrium problem. I will just read this in full. Quote, "One narrative design issue I've run into is what I call the lyrium problem, for obvious reasons, brackets. If you have something in your setting which can technically do anything, bracket, magic often qualifies, also ESO and Mass Effect, close bracket, then it will eventually do everything, and that's not good." So, as was pointed out, you invented the lyrium problem. I don't know exactly how much Dragon Age 2 is like infected with the lyrium problem per se. It becomes a MacGuffin.
It's an undercurrent. It is the MacGuffin in Act 1, and then it gets way out there by Act 3. So
I know in Inquisition it's very, especially
it's
red
super
lyrium.
rock.
Yeah, a magical super rock that is, responsible for like everyone's magic powers. It is very much ESO, very much the Force. Like, it is... Yeah, he could have just called this the Force problem, basically. Like, yeah, like it would have been even better to call it like the metachlorian problem. Just to be like
trying to explain things with science when they don't need to be explained with science.
Yeah, the RPG-ism that I fall back on is a wizard did it. And just like to end the conversations, people go, "Oh, okay." But yeah, in terms of the production of this game, as we mentioned, it was like a 13 to 16 month long ordeal, slog, sprint.
Insane.
The people who worked on this game have been very vocal about being like, nah, it was fucking crazy, because EA, this was the first BioWare game produced fully under EA, and EA shocked at the surprising performance of Dragon Age Origins, which CP kind of mentioned. That game did very well on consoles, despite the fact that the console versions of those games aren't the way to play them.
No.
And they said, okay, make a new one. And also, we want it out next year.
Yeah.
No, we don't. It's like Madden, right? You just make a new one?
You just use the same stuff and then make a new one.
I mean, that's something. Braden brought something up that I feel like we do need to address, that I don't feel like you guys talked about during the Dragon Age Origin podcast. And what is very important to talk about with Dragon Age 2 is that you get the sense with Dragon Age Origins that they did make that game as a love letter to the Aurora and Infinity Engine stalwarts that felt like, with KOTOR and then especially Jade Empire, that BioWare was turning its back to the old school audience that had gotten them to the forefront in the first place.
Yeah. Dragon Age is a PC-ass PC game.
Yeah.
However, while they made Dragon Age Origins for that PC crowd as like their love letter to them, and that is why I think that Dragon Age Origin got the reception that it did, is that, look, PC traditional CRPGs are janky and sometimes ugly and messy and all sorts of weirdness here and there. But Dragon Age Origins sold really well on consoles. And while we can complain about how Dragon Age Origins is basically a turn-based RPG if you play it on 360, and it's even uglier than the PC version, just everything ends up covered in blood and it's the worst looking blood ever, it's still the version that sold well. And when they made Dragon Age 2, you really do get the sense that they were moving and erring towards a PC focused direction first and foremost.
Then suddenly it does very well on consoles, and they say, well, what if we make the game for those people? And
what if we
therein lies the central tension.
What if we made an RPG, but for the Call of Duty Black Ops generation?
If you press a button, something awesome should happen.
It's sort of like Saints Row the Third.
Yeah.
Except it's a macro. You have a macro on the right trigger. It lets you switch your hotbar. It's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this game starts with the Hawk family escaping Lothering.
Oh, by the way, did you know? I think so we played this on an Xbox, and then I continued to play Dragon Age 2 on an Xbox, which is also where we played Dragon Age Origins. For some reason, I could not get the save import shit to work, but this game not only supports that if you want it, which is weird because it's kind of barely touches events in Dragon Age Origins a lot of the time. The web interface tool thing that they came up with to basically migrate your saves into Dragon Age Inquisition also still works, and will also let you, if you go through painstakingly clicking through all of them, unlock like all of the extra like item, weapon, like accessory shit that they're selling on the Xbox Marketplace. So functionally all of the non-story DLC, if you're willing to muck around with like a shitty 10-year-old website, you can just get, in addition to creating a weird like Dragon Age repository of all your like saves and shit. You could be like preserve your story, I guess, because there was no real way to migrate saves between those two generations of consoles. It was really weird, but I discovered this when I was like, why didn't this just import the save? And it was like, buddy, we've got some dumb shit for you over here. That was a joy. But yes, the Hawk saga, the saga of blank Hawk. I bring this up because it's what the character creation gives you an opportunity to gently be like, what happened in this other game? And you're kind of like, if you've not played Dragon Age Origins, I don't know what you say there beyond like fantasy stuff.
You pick one of three options for what did the Grey Warden do, and it's basically, were they a nice guy, were they a dick, or were they in the middle?
It's basically the same system that they used for Mass Effect 2, Jeff.
Yes.
If you did not play Mass Effect 1. And say what you will, but that worked, and it kind of works here. The one thing that I want to add in, just as like before we really jump into it, the lead up to this game in terms of promotional media, in terms of like, EA really did view Dragon Age 2 as this marquee game when it finally was coming out in 2010. This was when back in the, well, you still have to do this, where you had to like figure out where you wanted to pre-order the game, to figure out which pre-order bonuses you wanted. It had a Facebook tie-in game called Dragon Age Legends, which was a 2D role-playing strategy game. It had tie-ins to other works that were coming out, like Dead Space 2. And there was a big
Sarah Isaac's armor
groundswell in terms of just moving it forward. And this was a big deal when it came out.
Yeah.
Was it all the money they saved cutting the development time by like a third that they just funneled into advertising?
Maybe.
Do we know?
Dragon Age Origins infamously took like 5 years to make, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. And
It was
Inquisition
originally
took
going to
a
use
while.
D&D rules. That's how...
Look, I feel like Braden and I are of the same opinion of Dragon Age Inquisition, which is it's a bloated game that's more interested in being fan service rather than a cohesive story that actually follows a narrative that's
like
even
a lot of that game feels like
even marginally interesting. However, Braden, the one thing you could say about that game is at least that team led by Mike Laidlaw, at least they made a goddamn game.
Yeah.
Which this Dreadwolf team just consistently proves that they are not capable of.
But BioWare is its own thing.
Dragon Age 2.
Dragon Age 2.
Dragon Age 2.
The Hawk family. And that's literally the Hawk family, because you more or less start the... Well, that's not actually where this game starts. Where this game starts is introducing the most enduring character of the series so far. A little dwarf man named Varric, sitting in a chair, getting yelled at by just the hottest French lady you've ever seen, if you're very straight or very gay. You know, she works.
If you're
She's
very
great.
gay, you will be very disappointed. Spoilers.
Not a romance option in Inquisition for ladies.
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
Remember,
longing's a feeling. But yeah, an interrogation, an in medias res, tell me what happened, and you learn in so many sequences that Varric is a little bit of a raconteur. He's a fiction author who was present at some events, and he's happy to drag out the process of revealing them to this French woman, who is an inquisitor, whose name is now gone from my head, but I'm sure we just said
Cassandra Pendergast.
I forgot it because, spoilers, you don't play as her in this game, but you do in the next one. She's in the next one with some other people. And that gets you into, I guess, the tale of Hawk, who is fleeing from Ferelden because it's bad there because of the blight. You, your ma, and your opposite cisgendered sibling on a ragtag adventure towards a place called Kirkwall, where the rest of the game is going to happen.
Is it always your opposite gendered sibling?
No.
It's based on your class.
Based on your class.
Okay.
Yes.
It is,
because I always have Bethany.
right.
And she is a mage.
So I guess that's the important thing. What did we all pick for our classes?
Rogue.
I picked a mage. So I got Carver.
I
Ooh.
also picked a mage because I know what happens when you don't pick the mage.
What happens?
You have to use Anders if you want
You
to
have
heal
to use
her.
Anders.
Yeah.
If you don't pick it, well, we'll talk about that. But yeah,
I've noticed this problem. Ashley chose a rogue. So we're playing as a rogue. You'll notice that we're just saying the names of classes. That's not a mistake. Removed from this is the ability to choose a fun fantasy race. Right up front, things people complain about.
I know that people thought that, the Origins part of Dragon Age Origins were very superficial, but they're a little bit of like that old school storytelling where really you're the one that kind of colors within the lines to add in the pizzazz.
If you're an elf, you can give people shit.
Yeah. I find the fact that you're just a normal human person. I think that I'll say this.
Commander Shepard, one might say.
I do think the fact that you're a refugee, as we'll talk about later, is certainly interesting. I just think that, man, I actually kind of liked being a dwarf and people being shitty to me. And that's not because I'm a masochist or anything. But I kind of like the weird variable start positions, and to lose that and it all to kind of be the same character. Like, let's be honest, even if you do change your classes, you're still very much the same character no matter what.
Yes. Yeah, it's the choices that you are presented with over the course of this game aren't necessarily swayed by your class choice here up front. A lost opportunity. Again, one of those things that if you're like, oh, they made this in a year, never mind. You're fine. You did just fine, buddies. That's okay.
I've seen worse RPGs made in a similar amount of time.
So at what point in this process, so it's you, your sibling, and then you have a second sibling.
Yes.
This individual who dies. Spoilers.
Very sad.
It is very sad when your sibling dies. It's even sadder when they decide to drag out a brief cameo appearance from Flemeth to remind you of another game, basically.
To tell the kids at home, no, this is still your daddy's Dragon Age.
Yep, we're still here. This is my only line, as she looks at the camera knowingly and then disappears.
See, this is part of Varric telling like a tall tale, basically.
I'm kind of with M. Like, I've debated whether Flemeth just popping out of nowhere is just Varric telling this tall tale, or if it was an actual event. It should be noted that the perspective that the game is structured with is Varric being tortured, and it is debatable.
Yeah.
It is debatable how much of a reliable narrator he is, which is one of the more interesting parts of Dragon Age 2's story.
Yeah.
But no, I actually kind of like that moment with Flemeth where she's like, "Yeah, bitch, I'm back, and I'm got the full suit of armor, baby.
Got a new model.
I'm gone. I'm not in the rest of this. I'm here for this one horrible Dalish ritual. Bye.
Peace."
But yeah, I guess you're right. Like, I almost would have preferred if this game, I realized why you want to have the Grey Warden, why you want to have like certain characters from Origins in this game. And then of course we have to talk about Anders and how he connects to Awakening. But like, to have these characters that were so important to the first game and then just come in for these one-off vignettes that don't even feel all that earned.
They're cameos.
Yeah, but they're like frustrating cameos.
It's for the fans.
That's life. Life is a series of frustrating cameos.
Quote:
I was going to have breakfast with one of my best friends growing up, but he was too tired.
It seems like something they should have leaned into more if they were going to try and make it like, oh, Varric is just, spinning his wheels, trying to stall whatever's going on. Because we don't know what Cassandra is looking for you for. We're just like, relay the true story of the champion.
Yeah, and it's fine because that entire plot bit gets kind of brushed over in Inquisition.
Yeah. They're like, no, they weren't actually that important anyway.
Hawk shows up in that game and has a decent sized role in the story, but
some would describe it as a character assassination.
Yeah.
It's a damn near fridging, if we're being perfectly honest. Like,
yes.
Weird series. Weird.
What a bizarre series.
I'm sure there are other examples, but like any notion that just like, oh yeah, they've had this plan. No, there's no plan.
like someone look me dead in the eyes and be like, there's a plan. Like Dragon Age has been like a coherent story. They had A to B to C, and they're building towards this. It's like you're a liar.
You don't believe in the Dragon Age extended universe? No.
Like I can see. I would be kind of surprised if they didn't build off the events of Inquisition, just based on what happened there. Like, you kind of can't walk away from that. But on the other hand, they've demonstrated they're pretty happy to just, like, cut and run from other shit.
They did make an anime OVA, and then there was Absolution.
Sucked.
Well, Absolution was okay.
There's that terrible CG movie that is like, you want to know Cassandra's backstory?
Right. So yeah,
because
I don't know.
Was during EA's multimedia phase, also responsible for the Dead Space anime, there was a series of Mass Effect comic book tie-ins.
Yeah. But no, to get back to like,
what's up with Liara?
The one thing that I will say positive about Dragon Age 2, I actually think that this game has a very good to decent start. Like the actual initial attack on your starting city while you're with your family. And I actually find, I think the execution is poor, but I actually find the idea of you being a refugee that's needing to get through a series of bad situations to be actually genuinely kind of good.
In Act 1, you are doing the hustle grind.
Yeah, the hustle grind
it's
in Act 1 is okay.
Because the whole thing is, when Act 1 starts, you've been in Kirkwall for a year. Your family is basically living in the slums, and there's a constant threat of like, at some point the Templars are going to find out one of us is a mage and put us in the Chantry, and then we're all fucked.
And I would say this, if this game was just Dragon Age, but at a small scale, that would be okay. It's around that late Act 1 and definitely at that start of Act 2 when it realized, oh, no, wait, we need to have all of the BioWare big stage, big thing, epic stuff, when I think that this game really does fall apart. And I feel like this game has an identity crisis.
Yeah, but maybe we'll get into that in the next episode.
But no, this first like rags to riches story, as hokey as it is at times and as, let's say, boilerplated it might be, it's okay.
It's a good introduction to the setting and the characters. So, you are Hawk, you have Carver or Bethany, depending on if you are a mage or not. If you are not a mage, you have Bethany. She's your sister. She's nice. She's kind of boring. If you're a mage, you have Carver, who is a little shit with an inferiority complex. Who's just like, I think the Templars are going to ruin everything. Oh, woe is me to sit in my older brother's shadow. Oh, alas. And you're like, boy, I hope this kid dies a horrible death in the deep roads or something.
Or in my case,
not that...
glad you died early on in the proceedings of this game.
Yeah.
It's just, even in this first act, I feel like this game
Eric.
has, this first act has way too many plot threads, and I realize that's part of the because
setting it up.
They're setting it up, and this is an ensemble cast, and it's an ensemble adventure. However, even during this, you can already start to see the clunky hallmarks of Dragon Age start to kind of present itself, because you've got the Grey Wardens and you've got the mages, that whole dynamic. You've got the needing to reunite
the Templars and the mages?
Sorry, the Templars and the mages, that whole dynamic is starting to be, it's starting to introduce itself. And then
this game is not subtle.
And then you do have the Grey Wardens, and then you do have the Darkspawn, which that has always been the worst utilized part of this.
Listen, they're orc zombies. Universe. That's all.
And then you have the whole like needing to reunite your family, and then all of these character moments. Each character has its own little vignette on top of that.
Chris, like you're describing an RPG,
but it's just so clunky in this game.
Yeah,
that's just the reality of fantasy, baby.
The clunkiness of this game, it's less the plot stuff, at least in this first, like I kind of enjoy it because it's like a very clearly defined goal that you're given. So like, as you mentioned, you're in like your mook phase and you're trying to just basically like eke by. You're living with your shitty uncle who happens to still be in this town.
Sold the family estate to slavers in order to pay a gambling debt.
You slowly peel apart this,
He
like,
sucks.
oh, maybe you're a real not decent person. But you find a way to get up, basically. You're given an opportunity to go in on a quest down into the earth, into the deep roads. And all you need to do is pony up 50 gold coins to do it. You're like, cool, I'll just get 50 gold coins. This game makes you really go through the ringer to scrape together that much money.
And even if you do have enough money, they will still make you do the last handful of main quest plot thread setups where it's like, you gotta interact with the Canary.
Yep. You gotta learn where these people are. This is all basically in service of getting you around all the locations of
all
this
of
world.
Your party members, basically.
Yeah. And this world is basically broken into a city, which has basically 2 phases. It'll be in day or night. They don't transition naturally. And then sort of an outskirts of town. Each of these is represented by a map, which is a discrete screen with little nodes on it that will give you the names of quests that are active in each one of these zones designated by these nodes. That is nifty. Problem, you can't really get back into the menu that will tell you what any of these quests are from this screen. Now, this seems like kind of a small quibble, but I've got to say, it feels real shitty, because you're like, wait, what? At a certain point, if you're talking to everyone, which, there are a bunch of mooks in town who are just happily standing there going like, Bill's got a big sale.
Reminded you, it's an Xbox 360 game.
Yeah.
And they only had 512 megabytes of RAM.
But then there are folks who will take random things you found in the world and give you experience for them that may or may not count as a quest. It would be cool to be able to figure out what these quests are in this zone, so I kind of wish there was the ability to, look into your journal from that screen. Very small point. Much larger point, and this is, I think, the thing that people beat this game over the head with correctly, is, let's say this first act is 5-8 hours long, generously. If you're really, really stretching it out, you're going to see some of the environments in this world repeat even this early on. This is the big one for this game, I think. One of the ways that you make a game that is, at least on paper, this big, this quickly, is some Control-C, Control-V of various 3D environments. And is that done in other games? Other big games that you've played? Absolutely. It's done all the time. For some reason in this game, it's just so much more apparent. And it's not just it's a relatively short list of environments in the grand scheme of things. And
which was your favorite?
For me, it was certain
cave.
Yeah, there's cave sections.
There's dwarven ruins.
I like the stone hallways underground.
It's not like we are just describing a general setting, like a dwarven, carved stone place. But it's not just that oh, this looks kind of samey. It's literally oh, this is the same little zone.
You're not even putting these rooms together like a tile set. You are literally having the same area layout. Yes. You are just cutting off different corridors.
I think what's even worse is that when you go to when you pick up a quest, then the quests sometimes range the regular, RPG gamut of sometimes the mission is utterly mundane, pick up, deliver, kill 3 birds to pick up their feathers and then sell it to a merchant or give them to a merchant to get a discount. And others are really, really important, critical character moments that can sometimes hit you when you least expect it. And you'll visit an area for one quest, pick up a thing, do your little thing, kill a monster there. Then you'll return to Kirkwall. Then you'll do another quest. And then you'll be 10 feet away from where you last were, and now this magical thing has reappeared for this new quest. And that's the frustrating thing, is when it's I was right here. Why wasn't this here? I can't just what's the deal? And it's that for me was a very immersion breaking experience, and it happens a lot.
Well, you see, time has passed and the world progresses, and that's how they indicate it.
Do you really think that they fully commit to that?
No, because they didn't have enough time.
As best as they could. Like, if that had been this game's identity, which is really watching the transformation of a city, I'll say this. Like, I think that one city in Jade Empire where you have to figure out whether you reflood the water so as that the ships can go out or you don't, and you always side with fixing the dam situation because you're not a bastard. That transformation in that city is more dynamic than Kirkwall at times.
Yeah, like, and like, I think the
We'll get
360
into it.
512 megabyte of RAM point is kind of apt, because one of the things that kind of hurts this game, damages it a fair amount, really, is it, like, if this is this town, like they talk about this town, this city, or I suppose let's use the correct word.
It's a city-state.
Yeah,
In
like, let's say
their equivalent of the Sword Coast.
let's say 50,000 people. Like, there should be thousands of people in this place, right? When you are walking around any of the in-city zones here, you are lucky if you are seeing like 24 people, period. Not on the screen, just like anywhere. Like, the overall impression is a very empty, dead place. And, again, memory constraint. I didn't play this on a PC, but I'm going to go ahead and put I've got a 25-cent piece in my pocket right now. I'm going to slam down here and say it's no better there. It can't be any better there, because there was no fucking time to like what are you going to do? Implement like a crowd system? And I don't think that would have made the game better, but it just makes everything seem kind of like a lie.
Seems really weird and empty.
Yeah.
You're right.
And it, like, is that a thing that kills this game? No. It's on the list of many things that we're going to continue to point out that we're like, this is neat, and then this happens. Beyond the dungeon chunk level geometry copy paste parts of this, I think the roughest part has got to be not the combat in and of itself. The combat is more or less the same combat that was in Dragon Age Inquisition, which is just kind of mashy, hotbar ARPG stuff. It's more the encounter design I kind of want to talk about, because there's kind of two.
On PC, you can't zoom out the camera all the way like you would in a Dragon Age Origins. They pretty firmly want you to be behind the back. And on the console versions, I'm pretty sure you had to mash the button to attack until they patched that out.
I think it's a hold. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a cretin that likes to hit the button, so I hit the button. But yeah, the when you're doing the throw the like miasma potion thing, it'll freeze combat and give you like a move the cursor and throw it into this radius thing. But other than that, yeah, it is third person behind the back ARPG combat.
It is more KOTOR than Baldur's Gate, let's say.
Yes. Yeah. The encounter designs range from this room has people in the already. Those are the ones that you're going to like. And then there's the other version, which is this room had 4 people in it. And as you're dealing with those, they're going to spawn about 5 more behind you. And you're going to watch them load into the world if you turn around just in time. And then we're going to do that 3 or 4 more times than necessary, basically. With not a lot of enemy variety at that. It's usually like 7 or 8 mooks and then one sort of like mid-boss with about 5 times as many hit points as the mooks. Now, am I describing a lot of like RPG combat design? Yeah. Generally, though, you'll mix it up, right? Like you've gotta. This game just doesn't. Like, we're talking about a range of like monster, beast, people, the Talvashoth, the bandits in the out, like every group of monster enemy creatures you fight in this game pretty much has the same small repeated human wave tactic over and over and over again, and it just leaves to every single fight feeling exactly the same.
And yes, and the idea was, we talked about this when we did our Dragon Age Origins podcast, which was like a lot of combat in Dragon Age Origins can be completely fucking trivialized via crowd control spells and mages.
Yeah.
And so this was their way, their slapdash, patching leaky boat with a tiny little finger solution to that was, okay, we're just gonna have enemies attack in waves, and also mages don't have nearly the same crowd control potential. And to be fair, it's nice that like all of the classes are viable.
Yeah, all the classes are viable. They give you also, except for one exception that we'll talk about, they give you a pretty decent spread of party members. I think the problem is that they introduce them slowly, and there's
you
one
get them
big
all
gap.
In Act 1, except Sebastian.
There's one gap, which is magic.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Unless you have Bethany.
You have Bethany.
Or you are a mage yourself.
Or you are a mage yourself.
So, yeah, not to dig too deep into Act 2, because there's a nice cutoff point. I think we're going to dig more into that later. But I've gotten to the point where I've realized exactly why mage might have been the better move. Because healing... Okay, so here's the dumb thing that actually happened. Again, things we'll talk more about in the next episode. But I played through one of the downloadable content packs of this game, which I will say off the bat is not one of the better ones they've ever made. Is kind of just a discrete area you go to and do a bottle episode that is unconnected to anything else. And
which one?
The one starring a member of the guild. Yeah. And Ashley was like, it'd be funny if we just went all rogues. Just like, yeah, whatever. This game is being played on easy. By the way, this game is being played on easy. It will be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It kind of wasn't. There are one or two encounters that are kind of optional at the end of that, where they seem actually impossible without some more healing. You have potions that you can drink, but that is a timed ability to suck down a potion.
And
I was going to say, we should probably talk about why potions are not as viable as you might think they are.
Yeah, by the way, yeah, the timer is a real bastard on that. You are not able to just throw your teammate a potion, so you've got to, manually toggle over and control them. You can also set, by the way, we like a mechanical point. This is also Final Fantasy 12, which I didn't realize until my wife, who was driving the RPG car, she was like, "Can you run the menus for a while? Can you upgrade the boy?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll upgrade the boys. That's fine." And I was like, "What's this Tactus thing?" I was like, "Holy shit! It's Final Fantasy 12. It's just in here."
What did they call that in 12?
That was in Dragon Age Origins.
And there's like a bajillion tactical slots in here.
And so here's the thing I will say. I am playing this game on hard because I hate myself.
Sure.
Because I like CRPG combat with challenge. I really like the combat in Pillars of Eternity.
Wow.
For example. And I'll say, to this game's credit, ? I have barely had to adjust any of the AI tactics things because it doesn't matter.
Even on hard, it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter that much because if you need someone to get healed, you're going to have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
The
default sets also seem... Okay, like when you are giving them new abilities, they tend to slot them in, I've noticed.
Yeah.
So it's actually a reasonably durable thing for people. Like, I to keep going back to, we want to like make an RPG that is going to be for people who don't like RPGs and would rather play COD. I think they kind of hit the brief with this game. Like, I really do. Like, there is cruft for people who want cruft, but then there's, small things like your party members don't have discrete pieces of armor, which is weird because you sure as hell do, and you're picking up just hundreds of pieces of like boots and gloves and shit, and they're only for you. So you should just be like vendor trashing 80% of the shit you're picking up like immediately.
Especially if, say, you're a mage and you pick something up for a knight or someone like heavy duty armor or something like that. I will say it's just a weird amalgam, something that doesn't meld male-female, that feels like they did that in Mass Effect 2, where your armor is a very superficial part of your character.
Yeah.
And it's a very superficial part of your companions. So I feel like they did something like that. And honestly, if we're talking about like the production cycle here, I feel like making an in-depth inventory system for multiple characters would be something that is not easy to do. Asset generation is hard.
It's just from an asset generation perspective that actually, because they have like upgrade chunks that you can put into their armor, but they don't manifest themselves. Right?
As far as this goes, compared to Origins, where you had to like equip everyone, and you had an inventory. I believe the inventory was limited, and it's also limited somewhat in this one, but you rarely hit it if you are throwing stuff out as you should be.
What if I told you I live with someone who just picks everything
I
up?
am that person, but also I sell it when I cannot use it.
I get to run the sell stuff for sure.
But as far as equipping people goes, God, did I hate doing that. I hated doing it in Mass Effect. I hated doing it in Dragon Age.
Yeah.
It is not interesting.
The gear, the way gear is itemized in this game is incredibly boring.
Yeah.
Finicky and doesn't give any benefit.
In Dragon Age Origins, a game that has a similar problem where you just get infinite vendor trash, and the only items you will actually equip to your characters are all unique items that you get from quests or buy.
Yeah.
This game has a similar problem, but it's a problem I completely bypassed because I own all the DLC, Jeff. And the DLC gives you, just straight up fucking gives you, unique weapons and items and armor.
I'm well aware.
That all scale with level.
Because I did that early on. I went in, as I said, to this Dragon Age Keep. I think it's Dragon Age Keep is the name of the website. And just cashed in like all of that shit. And then had like 13 quests in my log that were just like, hey, there's a thing in your house. You should probably go open this chest. There's like a magic ring in there times 13. It was insane. And pretty much just rode those until I finished the Hot Felicia Day based DLC, where I got a full suit of armor that just has regen on it. So I don't anticipate there being too many problems anymore in terms of like anything.
Yep.
In terms of, we'll get into the main story, but in Act 1, I think there's only 3 DLC that you can trigger. I think it's the Black Emporium, the Exiled Prince, and Duty, if I seem to recall correctly.
No, you can do, Matt. You could do the 2 big DLC at any point, and there will be different dialogue depending on when you do it.
Yeah,
I have not yet done them.
I prefer to do those later, because I feel like narratively they make more sense later. But I did the Black Emporium, the Exiled Prince, and Duty.
The bonus shop.
Getting that bonus shop early is pretty important.
There is some good
Not
shit
when you have scaling DLC items. Although the Black Emporium does sell respec potions.
Yes.
They sell the respec potions, and also you get the Mabari Warhound summon. So that's
imagine putting that behind, let's say,
DLC.
Buying the game new and not used because it was 2011.
But again,
EA's like what was it? The John Riccatello quote was just like,
Project $10.
It was like, in the before times when you bought a game, that was it. You just played it. The quote was pretty much something like that, and it was just like, yeah, and it was awesome. You're fucking it up. Like, what are you talking about? You got
the issue with the Black Emporium. Yeah, look, I feel like it's important to have that retail shop, and then finding a letter from Xenon, whatever. Duty, however, I will also join Braden saying it is ridiculous that this is a pre-order bonus, because that one is about Sebastian and the Grand Cleric, and there's the bounty about that bounty that is a call to arms against Flint and the Flint mercenary group, and that is a lead-in to that entire story arc in Act 2, and without it, that Act 2 introduction is a lot more awkward.
You don't get Sebastian if you don't own the DLC.
Just weird.
Sebastian is no Javik from Mass Effect 3, but like he's okay.
He adds a lot.
He's a full party member. It's not like he was. He's not like those 2 hangers-on in Mass Effect 2 who are kind of just there.
Oh,
Like
Yeah,
he's
Kasumi
a
is
full party
Kasumi
member.
is fine.
Kasumi is. Don't bite your tongue. Kasumi's great.
No, she isn't.
And then the other guy, Zaid.
Zaid.
Not so good.
Zaid is British.
Zaid's
Yeah.
great because when you get him in Citadel, he's the best character. He's the best he's ever been as a character. But
That's
anyways,
Sebastian.
Act 1 has some cool moments. The missions themselves are interesting. I think that also the weird thing about this game is that essentially, disregarding the DLC quests, there are essentially 4 different types of quests that you get in this game. There are the main quests, which are basically progressing the story. There are essentially those secondary quests, which are just snowballs of things that you encounter throughout the story, progressing, moving forward, moving from one act to the next. And then there are the side quests as well as those companion quests. And like I said, the issue is that when we're not talking about the main quest, which has the very, as Jeff put it very well, that rigmarole of, oh God, this is the 3rd time I'm coming to this cave. Oh my God, this is the 4th time that I've been in this swamp. Some of those companion quests and some of those side quests, like I said, they run such a weird and wild and sometimes awful gamut of, wow, I really am just delivering a package. And there was nothing beyond that. Like the mundane, mind-numbing fetch quest versus, oh, wow, this was some really compelling, deep character building moments and lore. And then as a result, I feel really hesitant about moving from one set piece to the next or one X to the next, because it's like, I feel like I actually need to please, oh God, I need to play all of these side quests because I'm worried about if I miss something.
This game is a podcast game, like more so than the original, which definitely was, some of those dungeons were definitely very slow. This game, you can do a long string of quests where nothing of consequence actually happens before you get to the things that matter again.
Like there's a fair amount that you can spend just walking to various NPCs in town, handing them stuff, and they're just going, oh, thanks, I dropped that.
You will accidentally run into... This is one of my favorite moments from this game, because it is just so fucking bizarre and slapdash. So, in the Dragon Age Origins, I didn't import my save because I'm on a different computer, but the origin I chose, I guess the warden, saved the werewolves from their curse, and so on. And so randomly just walking on the coast, there's an elf being like, you killed my family. And the guy's like, I was a werewolf. Remember that choice you made in Dragon Age Origins? I got better. And then you as Hawk, and this is something we'll talk about in the next episode, but you're just kind of asked to give your opinion on something, even though you're just some dipshit wandering past.
Hey, you who's passing by.
And they're like,
what do you think about this?
Hey, please don't let these elves murder me. I'm not a werewolf anymore. And then you're like, yeah, no, they can murder you, whatever. Or, hey, maybe murdering people isn't very nice.
Or you pick the funny option.
Yeah, or you say the sassy Hawk.
Yeah.
By the way, worth noting, the dialogue system and
it's Mass Effect.
It's Mass Effect, but what they've done, which I actually appreciate quite a bit, is they've lopped off the morality system, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, it's not color-coded. Blue is the good guy choice, red is the bad guy choice.
It's basically diplomatic or friendly, and then it's funny and kind of goofy, and then it's like hard ass.
Yeah. And then the left side is, would you like to learn more?
Any questions?
Yeah. There's the goody two shoes response. There's the asshole response, and then the gosh, I really wish this had more Joss Whedon in it response. And
the snark response.
I've been playing as Snarky Hawk.
Here's the other fun thing. The reads are good. I'll give you that.
Here's the other fun thing about this game, and it's one of those things that feels like they could have only done it because of the weird size and scale of this game, is some of the tenor and tone of Hawk's responses are based on which of the 3 reactions you picked at the beginning of any given act. So if you pick the snarky options early on, a lot of like the incidental dialogue and some of your dialogue will be slightly more goofy than if you picked the diplomatic or hard ass. It's just a little thing, a little sprinkle.
If you want a version of Dragon Age 2 to be nothing but a series of what feels like a movie directed by Josh Whedon, this game's got you covered.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
Hey, yeah, the year was 2011. Snarky video game characters,
Like
very big.
If I'm not
Snarky
mistaken, the
comic book
Avengers
characters
was
coming
coming
into
out
vogue.
like this year, right? Like he was at his most ascendant inexplicably around this time.
Or
Right.
that was 2012, but
We were all infected.
2012.
Well, so
a
I
real
guess
year.
this gets to talking about the story in general. Like we said, the starting premise of this game, I think, is totally fine. The
Yeah.
smaller structure works right up until this game realizes it needs to be this big, epic BioWare thing.
Well, we haven't gotten to that. We're gonna get
And
to
I
that
get
in the next
that. I get that. I
episode.
just want to say that. But characters, right? This is a character game. This is a character-driven
I
story.
I
so
think
all
this
the
is
characters
part of
must
the
be
game
good.
that works.
The characters sell it, and they
I think
great.
this game has some fun. This game has the best inter-party relationships
Yes.
of any BioWare game, where it actually feels like the characters have relationships outside of you and your stupid bullshit, and
But
also some really good banter.
Yes.
yeah, the banter in this is top tier. But to your point of characters having lives outside of you, people complained a lot about the fact that all the characters were bisexual and wanted to get in your pants. That was a big complaint for some reason. I don't know why.
I feel like that BioWare
Hey,
has had a history
Sebastian's
of
straight.
saying.
Sebastian is straight.
I
Token straight
feel
boy.
like
choir boy.
Yeah.
BioWare got guff because for them, their writing crutch was always, how do we do LGBTQ people? Well, bisexual.
Yes, this is the answer. It's they just like use this to brush any question under the rug.
It's
Well,
fine.
bisexual.
Inquisition has all of the BioWare romance options you want.
Mm.
Question mark.
So you've got
Inquisition is just
Avalon-
them making Sense8.
Avaline's
Hey
great.
man, you want the guy who looks like Freddie Mercury and backstory involves his parents trying to blood magic the gay away? That's Dragon Age Inquisition,
man.
baby. I like
So-
Dorian, actually.
Dorian's
Dorian's
fine.
great. All right, let's run down these characters. So Varric, we talked about. He's your roguish dwarf. I think that's the one thing that I realized looking at these characters. They really give you like weird. They give you a lot of rogue hybrids.
Boy, howdy.
So, anyways,
Let me tell you, picking a rogue and then being presented with a party screen that is like 50% rogue
Having 3
Yeah.
rogues.
and one fucking
game.
healer.
And one healer.
we'll get to
Enjoy.
that. So Varric's great. He's funny. He's maybe the I just want to finish the mission type of guy. That
Now, he's a
character
smart ass.
archetype.
He
think
likes
so?
money.
No.
So you've got
He's good.
Sebastian, who is just a little shit. Fucking
No,
god.
Sebastian's he's the prince of a different city state, but he's also a church boy. And so basically his personal arc is, do you want him to stay like a good church boy, or do you want to say like, hey, guess what? What if you acted upon your ambitions?
Yeah,
and
what if
your
you
family
actually got
legacy?
revenge for the murder of your family?
But he doesn't join your party in full until Act 2.
Too. But I just wanted to
Then,
say that. Meryl's great. The
Meryl
fucking thing
is
that happens
a
in this
Dalish
first
elf.
act is, oh my god, maybe the best thing that we saw this podcast. Isabella's cool. She's the free-spirited pirate captain.
She's the most bisexual of the characters.
and I love her for it. I feel like
she's
it's earned
she's
there.
very good.
Best character is Isabella.
There's Aveline,
There's only
she's a
one
cop.
better.
Yeah,
My wife
Aveline,
is
who's a
looking at me.
bootlicker, but she does a lot to try and help
She's a cop and a mom,
She's working within the system to try to make it better, cop.
There's
but she's
Fenris.
also your best tank.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fenris, who I
is a
like.
broody elf. He was a slave in the Tevinter Imperium, so he
boy,
doesn't
all
like
the stuff
mages.
they talk about slavery in this game, all the themes about slavery in this game are pretty clunky and bad.
Yeah, I mean, he has a good voice. He's portrayed by none other than Balthier, Gideon Emery.
Gideon Emery.
Gideon Emery. As soon as Ashley heard this elf's voice, she was like, "Okay, he's in the party." And then he kept talking, and she's like, "Ah."
Oh, mage! I hate mages.
Depending on your choices,
you
either
cannot
get
trust a mage.
To be fair, mages really fucked him over quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
and will continue to do so.
Yeah.
See the next episode.
Yeah.
Which makes the whole dichotomy of which side you pick all the more weird and dumb.
And then you have your sibling.
No
yeah,
siblings.
You have Bethany, who's kind of just nice and boring. She's a good backup mage until you don't have her anymore.
Till the plot.
And then you have Carver, who's your little stinky little brother who needs his butt wiped, and he's a little baby.
So bad.
Carver's awful.
Every single party banter with Carver is just the other person giving him shit for being such a little whiny baby.
How are you so uncool compared
like
to
Isabella just giving him shit for being a cherry boy, Varric being like, the lesser hawk. Aveline being like, have you washed behind your ears, Carver? And he's like, no, I know how to wash behind my ears.
Then we got Anders.
And then there's Anders.
Did we do
returning
Meryl?
from Dragon Age Origins Awakening.
We did talk about Meryl. Meryl's great. I think that the whole blood ceremony that we'll talk about later is maybe the best. Is the best part.
And she's quirky and Welsh.
Yep. And my wife's favorite, so I have to shout her out.
When I learned that Anders is a reoccurring character from Dragon Age Awakening, I did what any God-fearing Christian would do, which is use my Xbox to pull up YouTube and try to find a plot summary of Dragon Age Awakening, which is how my wife was going to enjoy Dragon Age. Couldn't find a good one.
Part of Origin.
So explain Dragon Age Awakening in 3 sentences.
In Awakening, Anders is a mage who keeps running away, and basically as a way to keep him from getting executed by the Templars, you draft him into the Grey Wardens. He is kind of a sleazebag, he's your Alistair replacement, but he's a little more smarmy. And he has a cat, and he's your healer, so you keep him in the party at all times. In Dragon Age 2, he is a different character.
Yes.
And
still has a cat, though.
He is possessed by the spirit of justice. And I guess in early drafts of the script, they were thinking maybe Valana, who is the other mage from Awakening, would be the one possessed by justice.
That would have been better.
Would have been better. But his whole deal is he is now an ex-Grey Warden who is possessed by a spirit of justice.
That is corrupted and turned into a wraith.
Yeah, he's basically an abomination. And
that's not clear so far, though.
He really doesn't like how mages are being treated.
He has
he's your dedicated healer.
Yeah. I'm coming to this realization as we're talking about this. Do they only give you him as a healer in order to make him be around your party more, so that the events of what we'll talk about in part 2 have an impact, as opposed to this guy I never talked to has done something terrible?
I'm playing as a mage, so I don't have to bring him.
My theory has always been that they want you to not that was their intent, is what I heard, is that you don't want to have Anders in your party, and the easy mode, as they used to say, is Anders is in your party and you don't do the thing
because he has
justice.
He has a full party heal.
Yes.
Yeah. The problem,
Meryl does not have any healing spells.
As M and Braden are hinting, is that the problem is, if you don't have Anders, your experience in this game sucks shit.
Well, certain combat encounters are going to be a real pain in the ass, and you are going to burn through a lot of potions.
While I agree in general that the banter is great, I sure did have Anders a lot, and his banter is not tolerable at all.
Yeah, that's
his
why
banter is
you
maybe
don't bring
the
him.
Worst. Like, there's a part where he's
just like, oh, mages.
There's a part
about the
where
versions?
he treats insulting a person with a learning disability to their face as a laugh line.
Yeah.
There's a part where he says really inappropriate things about women.
Just
and
once?
a lot.
Yeah,
When,
comes up a bit.
when he more or less dropped what I'll call a light slur, because there are worse things he could have said in this situation, but it was incredibly uncool. I was honestly kind of taken aback.
Was
And
this
like
to
this is to
Sandal?
okay, so we have
Sandal the enchantments guy.
Yes.
look, we have to fucking talk about Sandal. Okay.
Yeah, we do have to
So
before we even get into this.
okay, so this is a God. Okay, so BioWare. So Canada. I don't even know where to start. It's so okay, so if you take everything on good faith, if you take it if you have the best, most kind, gentlest read on why this exists the way it does. This is someone in, if that, Origins was in production for 5 years, you said. So someone in about 2004, 2005 having an idea and saying, what if we try to include depicting a character in this game that has a learning disability, right? And make them be a character in this game. They don't have to be a main character, but they do something to help your character. Intention is not terrible, okay? Execution, when you get to the character Sandal in Dragon Age Origins, is a little caricaturish, and they don't do very much, which I think is a problematic depiction of someone with a learning disability for a couple reasons. Is it the cruelest thing that's ever been done? No, not by a long. But it's kind of rough that they just run that one back without really any changes. Really, in fact, they kind of double down and make it worse in this game. And it's not just the scene where Anders comes in and I forget the exact wording. There are worse word choices, but there's a scene later on where Sandal, who is his dad, basically is voluntarily an indentured servant to you due to things that happen in the first act of this game, and brings along his son Sandal to live in your nice house in Act 2. And Sandal is just talking to a dog, making dog noises, and his dad's just like, wow, what a fun interaction you're having with that dog. And it just is very awkward and tone deaf. He's not a character. He's like a weird little cartoon creature, basically. And it just sucks. It's just tone deaf and weird and shitty. And I don't understand why it's in here. And I don't think they were trying to do something nice. It's maybe just don't or maybe collaborate with some, I don't know. This just seems like such an ill-conceived character. I have no idea why they did it again and created the possibility space for this to be worse, because this is worse.
Here's what you would have to have done. You would have to get a sensitivity reader. You'd have to have gotten someone on your team who could write this character in good faith. They did not.
No.
Nope.
There is no effort made to do this in a way that is good representation. So it's, even if it wasn't saying any slurs, still very bad.
And that's one half of this coin. I do think it's worth kind of lingering on this, because there's that part, and then there's the other part of it, which is Anders. Again, it's basically one line in one scene of this game, but it gets to how to depict people who are shitty in games, basically, and tentism and the purpose of media or what. There's big topic shit that comes in here, but the goal is why is this line in here? It's basically depict that we're dealing with someone who is got a different moral framework, is morally dubious, might just be quote unquote a bad guy, right? So what's it's classic Hollywood logic. If you want to show someone is it at all ambiguous that this character is a villain? If so, have them kick a dog.
Yep.
At that point, everyone's
Kick
just
a
oh,
puppy.
he's a bad guy. Oh, okay. When Anders insults this person with a learning disability with a fun yuck joke based on the premise that they have a learning disability, at that point you're oh, he's a bad person. It's unambiguous what kind of person this is.
The question
then
then becomes, how the fuck do I get rid of him?
Yes. And then there's the mechanical tension of, but he's the only healer. To wit, I was chewing on this a little. At a certain point, it became kind of God, he's the only fucking healer. And yet I've seen him do this. And yes, to wrap all the way around to a question asked like 5 minutes ago, I think they do it deliberately. I really do, because it's like the spoilers for a thing that'll happen in the next episode. Kind of, he's the Jar Jar of this game.
Oh
Like,
boy.
He's it all comes back to Anders. Anders is the key. Like he is. It's insane.
He really is. But like I said,
I
just
hate
having
that you're
him.
right.
If you want to tell me that, like, part of the appeal of this game is like, yeah, the dialogue actually is kind of fun and interesting. Like, having him along ruins it, because all he does is talk shit about the people that you might like or demean them in ways that
listen,
it's
if
not
they aren't
enjoyable.
mages, they're not worth helping. And also, by the way, all of the mages you try to help are actually crazy blood mages.
You know, in retrospect, wasn't Solus kind of like this too, an Inquisition? Like
Solus is also a prick.
Yeah.
And
Solus
he is very much
sucks.
written as a prick.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Dragon Age equivalent, of we want to make a bad guy in your party, so we're gonna make him mage racist. Is their go-to.
And elf racist.
Yeah, elf racist and mage racist. That's their two choices, and they're branching out into like, what if you had a Templar? But they're not going like they're. I don't think Blackwall is like at all on the same level as anyone else.
Blackwall's a war criminal.
He's a war criminal, but also he's not like, he's kind of like just your dad who's there.
Yeah, he's your dad who's a war criminal pretending to be a Grey Warden.
Yeah, Solus just sucks though.
But yeah, fucking Solus is. Listen, I could go off about what I think about some of the party members in Inquisition and how much they feel like self parodies of BioWare archetypes.
They feel like cheap facsimiles of every
I really
BioWare
don't like
character
Sarah.
they've ever written.
I don't like
Yeah,
Sarah either,
God.
which is a fucking tragedy.
Sarah feels like a character who was written specifically because people love snarky little gremlins, and people love and we got to get something for the lesbians.
Sarah makes me
could've been.
so mad because she just the way that character is written reminds me so much of someone from my own life who also was.
Boy, I got a backstab in it.
Just vexed me greatly, basically.
He's up in bed.
Oh God, just yeah. What a horrible note to play for me specifically. Couldn't stand it.
I don't disagree with anything that you all are saying. I would just add that, again, you think about how they presented Inquisition, which is, we're making something that's a best hits of, something that goes back to our roots,
baby.
Yeah.
Like that's what they did. And again, at the end of the day, at least that team made a fucking game within 5 years.
Yeah.
We played a game here.
Yeah, we did play a game, and I don't want my negativity to seem like I hated what we played. No,
for a game that was made in this time frame.
There are also bigger things to complain about that are coming
I
up
have played
in the future.
far more wretched BioWare games than this.
Yeah.
A ringing endorsement.
Yeah.
I've played way worse video games. I think we'll get into it more when we meet again.
Yeah.
But Dragon Age 2 is interesting and frustrating, and it is interesting in the ways that it's frustrating, and it's frustrating in the ways that it's interesting.
Beautifully put, honestly. Like it is certainly, like, ultimately I think it's not Kusoge. I keep going back to that. Like, the whatever dubious reputation this game has, I think comes from some, we'll get into it in the next episode, some actual just like bad actors on the internet. But some of the things that they're saying I can't disagree with.
I think it's totally valid to be disappointed with this game.
Yes.
I think it's totally valid to say that does not feel like an earnest or authentic continuation of maybe Dragon Age Origins by far. No, absolutely not. I think that, like I said, I think that the weird thing is like this first act is not even close to being the worst part of that what we played. I actually think the pacing of Act 1 is pretty good. And that moment when you move from Act 1 to Act 2 and you realize that there has been this kind of transformation to this city is very compelling. It's just, like M said, having that transformation of the city to be greeted by the same NPCs and the same characters. And you know what? If like the whole point of like Act 2 is like, oh man, this epic thing that happened really set back Kirkwall and there's been damage and stuff. It's like, not really. Like people seem to be moseying on with their own regular business like normal. I go back to kind of that criticism that Red Letter Media said about episode 3 of Star Wars, where it's like, if you really want to show the epicness and kind of the doldrum of war, like actually show decline of this society. Show this society like people in lines for bread, people in lines to get soup. Show people fighting over morsels.
Yeah.
They didn't, and as a result, like one of the key selling points of this game, which is seeing this community be racked by war, doesn't work.
David Gator, in a
also
tweaked list.
Also, can we just talk about, and I have to bring this up, I feel like this is a good way to end it. Every single Dragon Age game has the deep roads, and every single time it's the worst fucking shit.
It is the sewer level of these games.
It is
every single Dragon Age game.
They're fake Underdark, and it is always incredibly boring.
Always the worst.
It is the point where my playthrough of Origins went to die. Basically, is like,
oh god, the puzzle.
It is how the first act of this game ends. Is the Deep Roads Expedition, and hey, there's that red lyrium. Surely this won't be an important MacGuffin later. And anyway, if you brought Carver or Bethany, they're going to die unless you have Anders in your party, or if you killed Nathaniel Howe in Dragon Age Origins Awakening. They just die.
Huh. Is that the trigger for that? Why?
I stared at a wiki page for a while, and I only half remember it. And if you didn't bring Carver or Bethany gets carted off to the Mage Circle. Carver joins the Templars just to fucking spite you.
Yeah, because he sucks.
And also, that way you draw less heat or something. But yeah, fuck him.
Glad he died in mine.
But no, yeah, this franchise is obsessed with the deep roads, and they haven't figured out how to make it anything remotely fun.
Do they do the deep roads in Inquisition?
Yes.
I don't remember it.
It might be the DLC.
That's possible.
It is a DLC. Yes. Jeff remembers that. I didn't buy it. Because I was like, oh.
Why would I want to pay money to go here?
Why would I want to pay money for more Dragon Age Inquisition?
That also, yes. It's just like,
there's that too.
There was a point where it's just like, hey, you kind of like this. There's a lot more. And then I realized, I looked at this like, this game's like half over. This is like we're 40 hours into this. We don't need fucking more. Are you kidding? No.
Lost in the hinterlands.
We're going to cut it off here. Dragon Age 2, Act 1 ends with you making a bunch of money, getting a house, and starting Act 2, where you start getting more involved in the big boy management of the city of Kirkwall.
Local politics.
Yay. Regional politics, even.
We can talk about the Kunari.
We can talk about Felicia Day.
Felicia Day.
We can talk about how they introduce Corpheus.
The villain of Dragon Age Inquisition.
Corpheus is good.
We can talk about how they
completely ruined his storyline in Inquisition.
They were going to redeem this game with the Exalted March expansion that got canceled.
We can talk about the staff of BioWare trying to artificially inflate the review scores of this game.
What?
Oh, you don't know this one?
Yeah,
We can talk about how one of the writers of this game was harassed out of the industry.
I do know that.
idiots on the BioWare forums talking about the gayness in it. Just all sorts. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with Dragon Age 2, which is why we're cutting this off so we can talk about it again in a couple weeks. So that's going to be it. Unless anyone wants to say something right now. A final party
I like video games sometimes.
Were video games a mistake? Still undecided.
No.
We'll see when Dragon Age 4 comes
with
out.
Dragon Age in front of them.
Yes.
Do I like video games with Dragon Age in front of them? That's a complex topic.
Thank you for tuning into this installment of Off the Deep End, where we covered a complex topic. Please send any and all questions about other complex topics to inquiries@deep.lol. Also, if you'd like to help keep this show and the Deep Listens mothership floating through space and time, consider kicking us a few bucks on Patreon. That is patreon.com/deeplistens. Any dollar amount is greatly appreciated. The $3 threshold lets you put a game into the RPG slush pile, which we do pull from. Special shout out to the artist known as SuperSex420 for providing us with our podcast theme, which is called Halfway. This and other great tracks by SuperSex420 are available on bandcamp.com. See you next time, and remember, there's no such thing as cheating in a single-player game, particularly this one, because the easy mode, you could just kind of fall forward. It's actually fine. Also, you can go into a website and unlock, like, game-breaking equipment in a really weird, dumb system. It's kind of a hassle, but, they try to make you buy them otherwise. It's weird. Bye!
Bye.
Bye.
This episode of Off the Deep End was recorded and edited on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Nisqually or Nisqually people, who have lived on and stewarded these lands and waters since times immemorial.